It should have not happened. And with those exact words today, Donald Trump found himself in direct, sharp conflict with the man who wants to take his place. Vice President James David Vance, who was the frontrunner for the next Republican nomination for president, said in an interview today, "I don't think it's smart to prejudge the investigation," when he was asked by the Daily Mail if he would apologize to Alex Pai's family for calling him an assassin who tried to murder federal agents. And of course, J.D. Vance did not apologize. Hours after Alex Pray was shot 10 times in what video proves was a murder by Donald Trump's Border Patrol agents, J.D. advanced judged the case when he endorsed a tweet by Stephen Miller that said an assassin tried to murder federal agents. J.D. Vance did at that moment what he now today says is not smart. He prejudged the case immediately, hours after it happened, and he prejudged the case of Alex Pray when video was already available and being watched around the world that proved Alex Pray did absolutely nothing to provoke even a single gunshot being fired at him. We've all now seen the video of that gang of federal agents who had surrounded Alex Pray, backing away from him and leaving him face down in the street with no one around him and him not moving, while only two of those agents continued to fire shots at Alex Pai's body. While most of those agents obviously and correctly felt completely unthreatened by Alex Pai's unmoving body and never fired a shot, the proof of how wrong it was to shoot at Alex Pray was that most of the agents surrounding him saw no reason to fire at him at any time. And today, Donald Trump did what J.D. Vance now says is not smart. When Donald Trump said it should have not happened, Donald Trump said that in a taped pre-Super Bowl interview with NBC's Tom Llamos. And so Donald Trump has rendered his judgment on the murders of Renee Good and Alex Pray. He was referring to both of those cases when Donald Trump used the words should have not happened. That means those cases, if they should not have happened, are murder or manslaughter or negligent homicide. And they are both cases of wrongful death which should be adjudicated in civil lawsuits, in addition to any criminal procedure in a possible homicide prosecution. Donald Trump said it should have not happened in what could be his most watched interview of the year because Donald Trump knows that that is what the people of the United States of America believe. Donald Trump has seen polls, and he knows that the polls are crushing his invasion of American cities. And that's why Donald Trump is saying it should have not happened. The protesters forced him to say that. That's why Donald Trump told Tom Llamos that he ordered the removal of 700 of his invading agents from Minneapolis. Donald Trump said that that was his idea. That retreat was his idea. Donald Trump told Tom Llamos a poisonous lie, insulting the intelligence of anyone who will hear it. Polls show that Donald Trump's Super Bowl audience for this interview will not believe his poisonous lie about his ICE agents because a new poll shows that 63% disapprove of how ICE is enforcing immigration laws. 63% disapprove of Donald Trump's invasion forces. 61% believe that Donald Trump's administration has not given an honest account of the shooting death of Alex Pray by federal immigration agents. Donald Trump was speaking directly to those 61% when he said it should have not happened. But Donald Trump is going to offend the 63% who disapprove of the way ICE is enforcing immigration laws when they hear his sick and poisonous lie about ICE and the murders of Renee Good and Alex Pray. I'm not happy with what happened there. Nobody could be happy. And ICE wasn't happy either. ICE wasn't happy. I shouldn't be happy. Most law enforcement officers are not happy when they are forced to fire their guns in defense of their lives. Most law enforcement officers who kill in the line of duty are not happy to do it. It is the rarest thing a police officer in America can do. Almost all police officers in America never have occasion to shoot at anyone in their entire careers. You'd never know that from the trigger-happy cops delivered to us in the fantasies of Hollywood screenwriters. But most police officers in a 30-year career never shoot at anyone, and the good police officers who are forced to shoot at someone never feel happy about it. But Donald Trump's invasion forces are different. If you have been given reason by what you've seen on video to suspect that they are enjoying the cruelty, you have been proven right. Donald Trump's Border Patrol agent, Charles Exum, tried to murder a 30-year-old American citizen in Chicago, Miramar Martinez. She's a Montessori school teacher who suffered 7 gunshot wounds fired at her by Agent Charles Exum for absolutely no reason. And the legal proof that there was no reason is that the criminal charge filed against her was dropped. She was accused briefly before the charge was dropped of trying to ram her car into Charles Exum's massive SUV. Video shows that that never happened, according to Miramar Martinez's attorneys. And Charles Exum drove that SUV from Chicago to Maine, apparently to remove the evidence, the crucial evidence, remove the proof that it never happened, because surely there would have been body damage on that SUV if she ever tried to ram that SUV. How did Charles Exxon feel after he discovered that the person he was firing at was an American citizen born and raised in Chicago with no criminal record, who was a monastery school teacher who had never committed a crime in her life and was on her way to her church that morning to deliver some clothes she was giving away? Did he say, "I'm not happy with it"? Did he say it should not have happened? No, he did not. We know what he said. After the shooting, he texted his Trump Invasion Force teammates, and what he said is the clearest window we have into the dark, ugly hearts of Donald Trump's invasion forces. Miramar Martinez testified to a joint House and Senate hearing yesterday where not a single Republican showed up, and the text immediately after she was shot by the man who tried to murder her were read by Congressman Robert Garcia. It's disgusting, shameful, and it gets worse. Miss Martinez, these are images of texts sent by the agent who shot you. And they're actually disturbing to read, but I think it's important for the public to see this. The agent linked an article about your shooting and texted, "Read it. 5 shots, 7 holes. I fired 5 rounds and she had 7 holes. Put that in your book, boys." Oh, well, it is what it is. Happens. This is someone that works for the United States government. I fired 5 rounds and she had 7 holes. Now, he was talking about you, and it's our understanding that he was actually bragging about his aim shooting an unarmed American citizen. Is that right? Correct. The entrance, and exit wounds created those 7 wounds from the 5 shots. The reply texts from his no doubt approving teammates were redacted when his texts were introduced in court before the case was dismissed. He texted to his friends a news report of the shooting, and his last entry in the text chain was "Sweet my 15 minutes of fame." LMAO, the deeply perverse and murderously dangerous Charles Exxon, who should never be allowed to carry a gun for any reason for the rest of his life, could not have been happier after shooting the 30-year-old woman for no reason. Laugh. That's what the L means in LMAO. Do you know what the rest of it means? That is as deeply evil as American law enforcement can get. Charles Exxon doesn't have a long career in federal service ahead of him because he will be fired within days after the next presidential inauguration, when a Democrat is very likely going to be taking the oath of office. 63% of America disapproves of Charles Exxon. 63% of America disapproves of the way ICE is enforcing immigration laws. And they reach that conclusion without ever seeing those texts from Charles Exxon. And those 63% will be repulsed by Donald Trump's pathological lie about ICE agents feeling bad about the murders of Renee Good and Alex Prey. Listen to how far Donald Trump was willing to go in telling this perverse lie. It should have not happened. It was a very sad to me. It was a very sad incident. 2 incidents, and they mentioned the one now, they don't mention the other. Well, I think they were both sad. And you know who feels worse about it than anybody? The people of ICE, worse about it than anybody. It takes a pathological liar for whom words mean nothing to claim that the federal agents who murdered Renee Good and Alex Petty feel worse about it than their families do. Let's see what they texted their friends after they committed those murders. Let's see that evidence. Hand over that evidence. If they feel badly about it, hand over the evidence of those texts to the local prosecutor in Minneapolis, County Attorney Mary Morardi, who will join us in a moment. She needs those texts for her investigation. Think of how sick and unfilling and inhuman you would have to be to say that those ICE agents feel worse about those murders than anybody. It's the kind of thing you can verbally stumble into, but as soon as you heard yourself say it, you'd correct it and say, of course, they don't feel as bad as the families of the dead. But they feel pretty bad about it. Donald Trump's an extremist in all things, and he's always an extremist in his language, in his pathological lying. So he can't say his ICE agents feel bad. He has to say they feel worse than anybody. And because he was somehow condemned to a life without human feeling, he has no idea what it means to say a thing like that. No, Donald, your ICE agents do not feel worse than Renee Good's brothers, who testified at that joint House Senate hearing yesterday. Sunlight doesn't ask for recognition. It just gives, it warms, it nurtures, it helps things grow. Renee did that for us. She helped us grow. She helped us believe in ourselves. She helped us see the good even when life felt heavy. Renee is not gone from us. She's in the light that finds us on hard days. She's in the resilience we didn't know we had until we needed it. She's in the laughter, the memories, the love that continues to grow, like dandelions, like sunlight, and like Renee. Thank you. Donald Trump, of course, didn't hear a word of that. He would never listen to that, and he would feel nothing if he heard it, because he is by all evidence incapable of human feeling. 303 former Justice Department prosecutors have signed a letter to Attorney General Pamela Bondi, objecting to Donald Trump's Justice Department refusing to cooperate with state and local prosecutors in Minneapolis, who are investigating the deaths of Renee Good and Alex Prey. The letter says blocking a state law enforcement agency from investigating potential violations of state law in its own jurisdiction would mark a severe departure from established DOJ norms and pose a serious threat to the rule of law. The letter, of course, can have no meaning in the Trump Justice Department that is devoted to the rule of Trump without the slightest regard to the rule of law. This week, Hennepin County Attorney Mary Morarty, who has jurisdiction over homicide cases in Minneapolis, sent demand letters to the Justice Department and the Homeland Security Department for evidence needed in her investigation of the death of Renee Good. Specifically, Mary Morarty issued a statement that said the federal government has been clear that they are not conducting an investigation into Renee Good's death, but we require these records as part of our ongoing thorough investigation into her death at the hands of federal agent Jonathan Ross. Let's see Jonathan Ross's texts after he fired those shots, after he walked up to that car and saw Renee Good bleeding to death in the front seat of that car. Let's see his texts. Hand them over to the county attorney in Minnesota. 8 more assistant U.S. attorneys have resigned from the Minnesota U.S. Attorney's Office. That's in addition to 6 veteran prosecutors who resigned last month. One prosecutor appeared to be on the verge of resigning, got fired after she told a federal judge that she was trying to comply with his orders, but was completely overwhelmed and was hoping the judge would jail her for contempt so that she could actually get some sleep. Things never heard by a Fed from a federal prosecutor before in history, including her pronouncement, a convincing one in which she said, "This job sucks." And so tonight, the prosecutors are resigning. The protesters in Minneapolis are winning. 700 of Donald Trump's invasion forces are retreating from Minneapolis in a victory for the protesters. In what might be the protesters' biggest victory yet, they have forced Donald Trump to admit to the world, it should have not happened. Leading off our discussion tonight is Hennepin County Attorney Mary Morarty. Thank you very much for joining us again tonight. You have made the point that the Trump Justice Department has said, we are not investigating the death of Renee Good. That would leave, it seems, available to you any and all evidence they might possess in that case. It should, and I will say about Trump's statement today, words are really hollow. If he really means that that should not have happened, I think a couple of things should happen. He should end the occupation now in the Twin Cities, and he should give us all of the evidence in both of the Renee Good and Alex Prey cases. In fact, as you mentioned, we issued a demand letter, as we are required to do, to get federal records demanding access to the information in the Renee Good case. We're about to do that in the Pratty case. So, words don't matter. If he really means what he says, then give us that information that we need to do a thorough and complete investigation and end this occupation. Right now, Marimar Martinez's defense lawyer was able to obtain the texts from Charles Exum, the man who tried to murder her. Would you have the same power to obtain the texts of Jonathan Ross, who shot and killed Renee Good? So it's very complicated, the federal overlay here. So we could, if we were talking about a state agent or somebody who is employed by the state, we could subpoena that. We could get a warrant actually for a cell phone, which law enforcement could analyze. We cannot do that with federal employees, and there's a process called TUI. The letters that we submitted, or the letters we submitted earlier this week, where TUI demands, that is the process that we are required to go through by the United States Supreme Court when we want information from a federal agency. So we are asking for the phones, the text, and so much more, but we have to get that from the federal agency, which is why I said, we're waiting for a response from the federal agency. And once again, if this administration wants to be true to its word, then why not give us that information that we've already asked for? What is the legal significance of the president who sent those agents to Minneapolis saying it should not have happened? Probably more in a civil context, a civil lawsuit, not really in a criminal lawsuit or criminal charges or investigation. But once again, it's hard to believe anything that this administration says. For instance, Holman had a press conference this morning, and at the beginning of it, he said they were going to withdraw 700 of the agents. And by the way, that leaves 2,300 still here if they actually are withdrawing those 700, because by the end of the press conference, he actually said the withdrawal of agents is dependent on the cooperation of the state. And one thing that I wrote down, because it struck me, was the community must end the resistance. So essentially what Holman is saying and what this administration is saying is we will withdraw our occupation of Minnesota if you stop exercising your First Amendment rights. In other words, if you capitulate to our demands, that is when we will end this occupation, which of course is preposterous to say end the resistance, stop exercising your First Amendment rights. Mary Murerty, thank you very much for starting off our discussions tonight. Of course, thank you, thank you. And coming up, Steve Bannon says Donald Trump is going to have ICE agents surround polling places during the election this year and the next presidential election. Senator Adam Schiff joins us next. The only president in history who has never read or would be able to comprehend one word of the United States Constitution said this. If you think about it, a state is an agent for the federal government in elections. I don't know why the federal government doesn't do him anyway. The answer to his bewilderment, of course, is in the Constitution. Officials in Fulton County, Georgia, filed a motion in federal court seeking the return of the 2020 election ballots that were seized by Donald Trump's FBI last week in a domestic FBI raid supervised for the first time in history by a president's director of national intelligence. The reality challenged Tulsi Gabbard. Here is Fulton County Commission Chair Rob Pitts. We will use every resource at our disposal to fight for their vote, and that we will fight using all resources against those who seek to take over our elections. Our Constitution itself is at stake in this fight. Today, Donald Trump's confidant Steve Bannon announced the plan for voting in Donald Trump's America. We're going to have ICE surround the polls come November. We're not going to sit here and allow you to steal the country again. And you can whine and cry and throw your toys out of the pram all you want, but we will never again allow an election to be stolen. But let's put you on notice again. ICE is going to be around the polls in the 2026 midterm elections. Joining us now is Democratic Senator Adam Schiff of California. He's a member of the Senate Judiciary Committee. Senator, you have heard the plan, ICE surrounding the polls. What can be done about it? Well, this is Steve Bannon speaking the plain truth about their intentions, which is Donald Trump will be your tin pot dictator if you let him. It is our plan to make sure there is not a free and fair election. We're going to resort to taking ballot boxes in Fulton County, Georgia, or the last election. We just learned that Tulsi Gabbard oversaw some kind of a law enforcement operation in Puerto Rico that seized voting machines and data. The DNI, the Director of National Intelligence, has no election remit in terms of domestic law enforcement, but we are seeing a concerted effort to try to overturn what they expect will be a very unfavorable election against them. So we are doing everything possible to prepare. Of course, we will litigate. Of course, we will do everything possible to prevent Trump from deploying essentially the palace guard to polling places. This is what tin pot dictators do. But in addition to litigation, we're developing legislative strategies. It will also, I think, most importantly mean that we have to mobilize people to turn out in such high numbers to overwhelm the elections in the sense of winning them overwhelmingly, that they're not close, that there's no opportunity to contest them. That's really our best protection, is just a massive turnout operation to make sure they lose, and they lose handily, because we can see, and they are telling us they intend to try to cheat. So Senate Democrats are currently in a negotiation with the Republican Majority Leader and with Donald Trump over future funding of ICE. Wouldn't it be demand number one in the Democratic Senate negotiating position, no ICE at polling places? I think, and we just got the list that the leadership put out that Senator Schumer sent to Leader Thune and the Speaker. Part of, I think, what we're demanding in this is that there be no ICE presence at sensitive locations like voting places, like schools, like churches. So that certainly is a very important element. In terms of the most important element, I would definitely rank protecting our elections, the ultimate safeguard of constitutional democracy, as a very, very top priority. But we also have to end these deadly sweeps. We have to end the deadly use of force. We need independent investigations. We need ICE to be identified, not wearing masks, but wearing body cams and identification. There are a lot of high priorities. We don't want them battering people's doors down without a warrant. But I agree with you, Lawrence. Making sure that they're not there interfering on Election Day is also a really high priority. Yeah. And this seems like the moment where the Democrats really do have the power to prevent this, since it will require 60 votes to get a funding bill for ICE through the United States Senate. Can't do that without Democratic votes. Can't do it without a negotiation. It's why the negotiation's happening. And if the Democrats' number one position in this is no ICE at polling places, then ICE will basically be the subject of a government shutdown, or Donald Trump will have to agree to that demand. Well, we're going to maximize the use of our bargaining position in every way. And we have to obviously look out for other contingencies. Even if we are successful in banning ICE from being present at polling places, that won't necessarily stop Donald Trump from deploying the military or deploying other law enforcement agencies. We're going to have to do what we did basically in the run-up to the 2020 election, which is try to anticipate all of the illegality, all the efforts to suppress the vote, all the efforts to overturn the vote that may take place during, before, and after the midterms. This is something I discussed with leadership again just today on the Senate floor. So we are gearing up and we are preparing. But hearing Steve Bannon make these claims, hearing Speaker Johnson cast out on the elections, and what a shameful thing, Lawrence. We heard from him yesterday when he was saying that, well, in California, we have House Republican candidates who are ahead on election day and fall behind every time there's a new round of absentee ballots. Just shameful to suggest, well, that's inherently fraudulent. And he goes on to say, well, I can't prove any of this. But people are doubting our elections. Well, of course, they're doubting them when people like the Speaker are pushing out lies, when the President is pushing out lies, when Steve Bannon is pushing out lies, and when they've got their media amplifiers to amplify those lies. Yeah, and of course, California is a pioneer in mail-in voting, has massive mail-in voting, which means that the mail-in votes are counted later than the votes that are cast on that day. Everybody in politics knows this. Everyone knows how to watch those election returns. Speaker Johnson, pure lying about that. Senator Adam Schiff, thank you very much for joining us tonight. Thanks, Lawrence. And coming up, New Jersey Governor Mikey Sherrill showed in her last election campaign how Donald Trump loses elections for Republicans, and Donald Trump keeps doing it. That's next with Governor Mikey Sherrill when she joins us. Remember Infrastructure Week, the week that never happened during the first Trump presidency? Well, it's happening now. And Donald Trump's version of Infrastructure Week is to kill the most important infrastructure project in the United States.